Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Mind Muscle Connection podcast. Today is a solo episode, and I have a topic I want to dive into, and that is, 7 meal timing strategies to maximize your body recomp. But before I do that, I want to just go over a few ways you can help support the podcast. So first, if you found this podcast to be helpful in any way, if you could leave a rating and review, and that will help more people find this podcast. Again, I appreciate everybody who listens, but I want to continue to grow this. And again, the more reviews it has, the more people are more likely to listen to this. Now, if you're new here, obviously listen to this a little bit more before you go and do that and see if it's something that you even want to do that for. But next, I have, if you haven't yet, give me a follow on Instagram, Jeff_. That's where I'm most active on social media. So if you have questions on this podcast, any questions in general, if there's something you need clarification on, again, that's the best place to reach me there. So with that out of the way, let's dive into today's topic, and that is meal timing. I think meal timing is important, right? But I do want to note that your overall intake for the day and week is priority number one. So for example, if your goal is to drop body fat, you need to eat in a calorie deficit. Meal timing can help you stick to it and get you into a calorie deficit and optimize your body composition more. But meal timing won't matter if you aren't in a calorie deficit, right? If you eat in a way that's like, let's say you try intermittent fasting, that's a meal timing strategy and a way to implement that. Or again, it's, hey, eat this amount of meals per day. That can be a way to help you get into a calorie deficit. But if it doesn't do that, it doesn't matter what time of day you eat. If you have food around your workouts, none of that matters, right? And the same is true for gaining weight. You could have the perfect meal timing, but if you aren't in a calorie surplus, it doesn't matter. So what this means is you first want to get your overall intake nailed down, but focusing on meal timing can help you with nailing that down. Or it can be a strategy you focus on after you get your overall intake nailed down. But again, I think the big thing here is just understanding that this isn't going to be something that is going to override being in a calorie deficit, right? Again, it can be a way to help you get there, and it can be a way to optimize things once you are in a calorie deficit, but again, it's not going to override the energy balance that you're in. So let's talk about some benefits of meal timing, right? So it's going to enhance nutrient utilization. Timing your meals can improve how your body processes and uses the nutrients you consume, leading to more efficient muscle growth and repair. One thing that I would say there would be if we eat overnight, again, our body's not in the most optimal position to utilize those nutrients. Again, that's where meal timing can come into play, right? There. Also timing in terms of protein and how often we have protein, that can be something there as well too. It can enhance muscle growth. So proper meal timing, especially around workouts, ensures your muscles get the nutrients they need for growth and repair, leading to more effective muscle building. So again, we'll talk about protein and the timing that you should have around it, but definitely getting some protein around your workout is going to be key. And so we can see where the timing of it, again, your overall protein intake for the day is most important, but when you have that can alter some things there. Can stabilize energy levels. Consistent meal intervals help maintain steady blood sugar levels, providing the energy required for both daily activities and workouts. So again, timing your meals can help with energy levels. If you're eating just weird meal timing, you don't have any structure around it, could lead to some issues around your energy. It can aid in weight and body composition management. Regular eating patterns can help regulate appetite and promote a leaner body composition by balancing muscle gain and fat loss. Again, we know overall intake is most important, but this can certainly help us in this pursuit. And next, it improves metabolic health and muscle efficiency. Aligning your eating schedule with your body's natural rhythms can enhance metabolism, which is vital for efficient muscle growth and overall health. And again, that kind of comes back to the timing of the day there with that there. Those are some benefits of meal timing. Let's dive into the strategies. My first strategy, and again, these are in no particular order, so this isn't like the most important, but one strategy is carbohydrates 1 to 3 hours before training. Fueling up with carbohydrates 1 to 3 hours before training can be a game changer for your workout performance. Again, our overall daily carb intake is most important. Timing will matter on this. If you're going to your workouts fasted, you've always done that, you feel like you need to do that, and then you start to have carbohydrates before your workouts, you're going to see a massive difference in your training performance. Again, as long as you're not doing something that's like super fatiguing, so if you're just doing weight training workouts, I think this might matter a little less, but it can still be helpful here. A pre-workout meal with carbs can boost your energy, helping you train harder, a key factor for muscle growth. So again, we're going to be able to push our training harder, which is going to allow you to get to failure closer, and you're less likely to fatigue out. And there's science to back this. Studies show that carbs before resistance training can enhance performance. Again, this is going to be more so with higher volume type training. Again, if you're doing more strength type workout, low volume, again, this may not be as helpful. But again, if we're doing higher volume type stuff, this can be helpful from a performance standpoint. Again, if we're say in a building phase and we're getting plenty of carbohydrates daily, this probably becomes, again, it's important because you obviously want to really prioritize your weight training, but it becomes less important because you just have plenty of carbohydrate in your system at any one time. Whereas like when you're in a fat loss diet, you're in an energy deficit, this may start to have a larger impact. So while it's not mandatory, I recommend a pre-workout meal with carbs to improve your training to build muscle. So again, if you're someone who's always trained fasted or think you need to, or you usually eat 5-6 hours before your training and you never have anything beforehand, this could definitely be something that enhances your training. But again, your overall intake matters. So if we're in a fat loss phase and you add in some carbohydrates before your workout, and now that causes you to be closer to your maintenance for your calories for the day, we're going to have to alter the timing of that a little bit and move things around there. Number two, protein around your workout, specifically post-workout. As I mentioned in the carb section, you don't have to eat beforehand, although it's recommended. And unlike carbs, protein aren't going to play a big role in training performance. A lot of people think that like protein is going to be something that's like going to boost performance and help you like really train harder. And that's not the case, right? That's not the role of protein. Again, that's going to be carbohydrates role there. However, if you don't get protein in within 1 to 3 hours before your workout, it becomes more important to get protein in within an hour or so after training to help you recover. So you could see where this is, if you do train fasted, this is where it's going to be the most important. Or if you're not able to have that meal 1 to 3 hours beforehand, then it becomes more important to get that protein in after your training as soon as possible or within an hour. Again, I don't think we ever need to stop working out and then slam a protein shake. I don't think you need to be that on top of it within an hour. We don't want to like fast in the morning, train at 9, and then we don't eat till 12, right? That would, to me, that would, from a body composition standpoint, that would not be great. Again, it could help you from a weight loss perspective and manage your weight, but again, that's probably not the most optimal from a body composition standpoint. So again, we just want to make sure that we get some protein in around our workouts, especially if we don't have it beforehand. As a general rule of thumb, the more protein you have 1 to 3 hours beforehand, the more wiggle room you have afterwards. The less you eat before, the less wiggle room you have after as well too. So again, we do want to try to get some protein in somewhere around our workouts, but we don't have to do that, the anabolic window where you have to get it in 20 minutes after you work out. Otherwise, that workout was a waste, and we definitely don't need to do that. Number 3, ideally, we would spread our protein intake into at least 3 separate servings. Okay. Again, your overall protein intake for the day is most important. And as more research comes out on that, I do think that is true. Again, we really want to make sure we nail down that overall protein intake for the day. Don't be like, oh, I need to get 3 separate servings, and then you only get like 20 per meal, right? Again, like the most important would be to get your overall protein intake for the day. And at the end of this, I do have an update, 2024 research update on some of these things in terms of what I may change slightly. But again, generally speaking, if building muscle, if we're really focused on body composition and adding muscle, we probably want to split our protein servings. We probably want to get at least 3 protein servings throughout the day. Again, in terms of how much you have in those exact meals, I think we can be a little bit more flexible with it. And again, your overall protein intake for the day is most important. For talking, we're trying to maximize muscle growth and say we have 175 grams of protein. That's going to be hard to get in 1 to 2 meals, right? Like you almost have to you almost have to do it there. Again, you could do 100 grams of whey protein, and that's probably not too hard to eat. But again, then that comes down to, all right, we probably need to get some protein through other sources as well too. So again, maybe on one day where that's all you have, again, maybe that will work. But generally speaking, it's going to be hard to get all your protein in two meals. So again, this is where 3 comes into play. And you could probably go all the way up to 6 in the research. Once you get past 6, there really is no extra benefit. So again, 3 to 6 seems to be the sweet spot. I think 4 is most feasible for clients when you break down the days. But again, you can certainly do 3, you can do 5, and you could go all the way up to 6 if you want to on that. I think the big thing here is, so number 4 is we want to keep protein intake relatively the same at each meal. Okay. Again, your overall protein intake is priority number 1, but from there, ideally we would try to spread it out relatively evenly throughout the day. So something like this would be better, like 25 grams, 35 grams, 30 grams, 45 grams, instead of like 12, 25, 8, 9. 90, sorry. Again, you don't have to get it perfect, but we probably do want to avoid massive variations, right? So again, it would be like if you were doing 3 meals and you needed to get 150 grams of protein in, doing 50, 50, 50. And again, it doesn't have to be that perfect. It could be 30, sorry, I'm going to try to do my math here, 30, 40, 80, right? That's going to be better than doing 5, 70, or 5, 60, 85 or whatever. Again, that math probably isn't perfectly lining up, but you get the point, right? Again, we probably want to try and hit a minimum of 20-ish per protein serving. That's like that when I'm making my meals and talking to clients, again, we're trying to aim for that like minimum of like 20 grams. Again, is that a hard cutoff? No, but ideally we would be over 20, right? And again, understand we don't have to be perfect with this. And this is going to come into play when I go over the 2024 kind of research update. Again, I'm even more flexible now with this than I was, say, a year ago on this. Number 5 would be high protein breakfast, eating larger meals early in the day. Recent research has shown that eating larger meals earlier in the day can help with feeling fuller throughout the day. day. So again, rather than having a smaller breakfast and like a smaller lunch and then a massive dinner, you probably want to do a larger breakfast, a little bit larger lunch, and then maybe a little bit smaller dinner. If you struggle with hunger and cravings at night, this may be a great strategy for you. So in the research, I believe that calories ended up being relatively the same, but it was more so like their feelings of hunger were they had less hunger when people had larger breakfasts is and larger lunch is. I think the big takeaway here is we just don't want to have super small breakfasts and lunches, because I think what ends up happening there is you're more hungry throughout the day. And then when you get home at night, you're around all that tasty food, you have a tasty dinner, you're just more likely to eat more calories. And that's going to be something that's going to get you out of the energy balance that you want to be in. And then on the flip side, if we're in a fat loss phase, we can find ways to manage hunger. That's obviously going to be a net positive for sticking to your fat loss diet there. But again, I don't think you necessarily have to have it to where it's like your breakfast is 800 calories. And again, I'm just making up numbers here. Your lunch is 600 calories and then your dinner is 300 calories. I don't think you necessarily need to do that. I think the takeaway here with this one is we do want to have protein early in the day, and we want it to probably be at least 20 to 30 grams. And we don't want this meal to be like 100 calories, right? We probably want it to be 300 to 500 calories at a minimum at the end of the day. Because what I do is I have oats in the morning. It's not, this morning meal isn't my biggest meal. I do like to have more food at dinner. I like to really have that be the meal that I eat the most calories. And that kind of goes against what I just said, but I'm also making sure that I'm eating plenty of breakfast too, right? Whereas I see too many people they're rushing in the morning, they skip breakfast, and then they're like, I don't eat throughout the day and I only eat once a day, and somehow I'm not losing weight. And it's like, yeah, because you're probably consuming some calories throughout the day because you're hungry, some snacks here and there. You don't really feel like it's a lot, but then those foods are calorie dense, and then you go home and it's game over. And I think the other thing here with this too is a lot of people, they stress about not having enough calories available at night when they're hungry. And so they stress about that, and then they don't eat a lot during the day because they want to make sure they have plenty of calories, but then they don't ever really fill up during the day. And so, yeah, I could see why, because you're always hungry and you are like trained to think that's how your brain works. But can we potentially switch that around and try this again? If you haven't ever done this, would be something that I would highly consider. Number 6, we want to limit large meals late at night. Again, you don't have to have a strict cutoff at 6 p.m. And again, if you eat at 6:30, you're going to gain all this body fat, but you do want to limit large meals too close to bed, and large meals in this kind of window of 10, like 9 to 9 to 4, something along those lines, 9 to 3, something like that. And the reason being is from a circadian rhythm standpoint, our bodies in the evening and overnight, their digestion slower. We're maybe a little more, we're not as insulin sensitive during this period of time. And these are things that can add up over time. Again, your overall calorie intake throughout the week's the most important, but things may just be a little less responsive. So if you're someone who you like to stay up late, you eat one of your meals later at night and you're not seeing the results you want, this is something that we do want to look into. Again, I know there's a myth that like, oh, you can eat after 6 p.m. And again, that's true. You can eat after 6 p.m. I'm not saying to not eat after 6 p.m., but we probably really want to avoid these really large meals, not only from that standpoint, but also it can impact sleep. However, times when it may not impact sleep would be if you're like lean, you've been dieting for a while, and you have a little something at night that can potentially help you sleep better. But we probably wouldn't want to have something very calorie dense late at night there. So again, this is going to impact sleep, but from a digestion and how our body handles food standpoint, it may be a little less efficient later in the day. So again, we just want to really limit those really large meals late at night. So yes, I am talking about, hey, if you go out on the weekend with your friends, you have some drinks and it's 12 a.m. and you're super hungry, yeah, that's probably not going to be great from a smashing a whole pizza at that time. Number 7, stick with the same meals per day, timing of those meals. So again, this is a strategy that can help you stick with your nutrition and gives you a good foundation from day to day. I just had a conversation with a client yesterday who is struggling to get some consistency in his day, and he's not seeing the fat loss results that he wants, but his meals, like he doesn't have that like foundation with his meals. So every day things are different, right? Meals are different, timing's different. Again, that just adds too many variables into the equation, and it's going to be hard to stick to it. Again, you can see fat loss results, you can see body comp change by not having these meals stay consistent or the timing of them. But the more that we have, it's just going to be harder, right? And then again, this is also on a gradient scale where it's like you could have more flexibility, less flexibility, right? Again, it's not either or of, hey, you're super flexible or you're not flexible at all. Again, this can be a gradient scale. Again, we can take this from okay, maybe you eat 3 to 4 meals per day. Okay, that's going to be better than you being at 2 one day, then 1 one day, then 4, then 5. And again, so that's one way to do it. Another way we can make this structured, but also some flexibility is Okay, maybe you're not necessarily eating at 9:30 a.m. every day. Maybe it's from 8:30 to 10:30. Again, so we're having some flexibility built into this, but we do have some sort of structure from day to day. Again, really with clients, that's what I'm trying to do here is find as much structure from day to day as possible. And again, for some clients, that's a little bit more flexible, and some clients it's more rigid. Again, that just depends on what the person can do there with that. And there might be a small benefit of keeping meals around the same time each day from a body standpoint. So again, you may, from an energy expenditure standpoint, things may be a little bit more efficient if we keep meals around the same time each day. But this is more so a great strategy to give you structure and foundation with your nutrition from day to day versus any physiological benefit that we may have from it. Okay. Again, this is a strategy that I really try to implement with clients right off the bat is, hey, let's get some structure. Let's set up some meal times here so you can stay consistent. Again, for me, that's been one of the biggest game changers of I can be flexible with my nutrition and I don't need to track every last calorie because I have some structure with in terms of the meal timing. Again, it took me some time to get here. I did track for a period of time, so I don't want people to think that you can just skip tracking and you're going to have everything nailed down. Again, I do think there's some benefit to tracking for a period of time, but again, we don't have to. But this comes back to the gradient scale of if we don't track our food for at least a period of time, now we're sliding that scale over to the flexible side of things, which can work, but it does make things a little bit more challenging. So I want to go over just a 2024 update. So there are two small changes I would potentially make to this list since making it back in 2023. And it's around protein timing. Okay. So while I still think to maximize muscle growth, you should still have about 3 to 6 separate protein servings per day. And those should probably be relatively even in terms of how much protein. Again, we just want to avoid those massive variations like I talked about, but I'm a little less inclined to think this is super important. Okay. So basically what I mean is I think 2 protein servings per day can work. And I think you could have some meals be a bit larger in protein than others when needed. So again, that just gives us a little bit more flexibility there. But if muscle growth is your number one goal and you really want to maximize that, I still think, hey, at minimum 3 per day, and we probably want to make sure that each meal is relatively similar. Again, I gave you some suggestions earlier and those would still apply. Again, you could do 8 in one meal, you could do 90 in one, and you could do 30 in another. I think that would be totally fine. But from a maximizing muscle building standpoint, you could probably do a little bit better than that. But if you're just like, hey, I'm okay with a little bit of muscle, I'm not trying to maximize it, I'm more so just focused on, I just want to maintain a healthy body weight, healthy body fat levels. I think that's totally fine. And you could totally do that there. Okay. So just change in that. And really this came down to there's been multiple studies on like overall protein intake being number one. And then also there was another study recently that looked at a lot of people think you could only have 40 grams of protein in one meal. And it's just not going to be great from like a muscle protein synthesis standpoint. They showed that even up to 100 grams at one meal, there still was some benefit to that. So again, we probably have some flexibility there, but if we're trying to maximize things, that's where I would be careful with that. And then lastly, as far as meals go per day, again, you can make anywhere from 1 to 6 work, even higher than that. But I think the sweet spot, again, if we're focused on body composition, we're focused on muscle, we're focused on fat loss, I think 3 to 6 is going to be that sweet spot. And that's usually what I tell clients. Again, we can do 2, but I think if we really want to squeeze it to what's the best and most practical and everything into consideration, I think 3 to 4 is going to be where we fall at with that in terms of practicality and body comp, if we're focused on body comp, right? And I think 3 to 4 works because it's once you get to 6 meals, it's like you're just eating a lot throughout the day. And if we actually do stick to these meals and we have full meals, that's just a lot of eating. That's a lot of breaks you have to take. Again, if you have all the time in the world and you enjoy eating that way, I think that can work. But again, the clients I work with, they have jobs, they have family life, they have responsibilities, and again, I think it's not feasible to have somebody eat 6, 7 times a day from a practicality standpoint. But again, we also have to take this into consideration. If 2 is what they can do and that fits best with them and that allows them to stick to the energy balance that we want to, then that's what we're going to do. And also just think this could be something that changes based off of what phase of nutrition we're in. Maybe in a phase where we're in maintenance, this is going to look different than when we're in a fat loss phase, right? So again, that's another thing we need to take into consideration. Whatever you pick here doesn't mean you have to necessarily stay with this forever. Again, there can be some flexibility here. So hopefully that gives you some guidelines on this. Again, remember, meal timing falls lower on the priority list than your overall caloric intake, but it can be a way to maximize things and to help you stick to whatever energy balance you need to be in. Hopefully this was helpful. If you need help setting this up, my free 30-minute strategy calls for you. The link to that is in the show notes. I look forward to chatting with you and I will speak with you next time.